Chapter 3. The Shadow of Future Creation. Since the first breath of God at the beginning of all the worlds, it was preordained that creation would exist within a rhythm of expansion and contraction. Eventually there would come a time when the physical universe would stop expanding and begin to contract. The Hindus refer to this process as the in-breathing and out-breathing of Brahma, the process through which God breathes out all of creation, and then breathes it all back in again. At this point in linear time, we are very close to the middle of the cycle, soon to reach the exact midpoint between the out-breath and the in-breath of God. The universe began to reach this midpoint as unicellular organisms were emerging on the Earth, but the exact midpoint is yet to be attained. It will coincide with what has come to be called the Second Coming of Christ. When any vibrational system reverses the momentum of its direction, as a pendulum does at the uppermost point of its swing, there is a moment of complete rest before it resumes its movement in the opposite direction. Since rest, or the total cessation of movement, constitutes the opposite of time, there is at the precise moment of its occurrence, a micro-interval of non-time, a moment of eternity. This is the same interval of non-time that occurs many times each second as the atoms of the physical world vibrate back and forth. This is an opening into the Nawal, a doorway into the presence from which all life energy springs. What happens when a universe stops expanding and begins contracting? What happens when an entire cosmos reaches the exact point of directional change and comes to a moment of absolute rest? You will have the opportunity to see for yourself very soon, for this event lies just before you in linear time. It will provide an opening for the emergence of something incomprehensible. Before we touch upon the nature of this occurrence and its implications for human beings, let us consider, however briefly, something of your nature as you existed prior to the fall. The entire biological history of this planet has been but the shadow cast in matter by your approach. It is the way that rocks and water and air have begun to respond to your presence, for you are life itself. You are that which lies beyond all duality, beyond all materializing tendencies, beyond all restraints of time and space. Your consciousness is both infinite and eternal. It can dwell in the limitations of matter and perceive through whatever filtering systems you so choose, but in healthy function, it is not bound or limited by those systems. Rather, it uses them as instruments of perception, exploration and adventure. Outside of time and space, you are one with the Creator, the all that is, the Source. But when your consciousness moves within the context of a manifest universe, you become the Son, the Christ. In essence, you are the relationship between spirit and matter, the mediator, the bridge, the means through which the Creator relates to creation. You are life as it relates to planet Earth, eternity as it relates to time, the infinite as it relates to the finite. Though you presently experience yourself as a separate and fragmented species, you are in fact a single unified being, sharing the full consciousness of the Creator. You are brought into living, focused expression when you are inside of creation by the manner in which time and space, matter and energy, sea and stone, react to your presence. As the Christ, as the only begotten consciousness of the Father, you have been given a number of remarkable qualities. You are able to expand and contract in accordance with the focus of your attention. You are large enough to encompass all of creation, yet small enough to climb inside. Your Father Creator also permeates creation, but in a different way. In His vastness, He surrounds creation. His being saturates the physical universe, all the stars, the sun, the planets in your solar system, the distant galaxies, but He relies on you for His focus. You are His specific attention. As the focus of the Creator's attention, you have been roaming around inside of creation for billions of years, expanding and contracting, drifting in and out of this galaxy, this star system, that star system. Everywhere you go you see the matter that your Father has created. You observe the many wonderful forms it takes. The mighty suns, the red giants, the white dwarfs, the vast spiraling galaxies, the quasars, the black holes, the white holes. You watch the incredible contortions of time and space that take place in the various gravitational fields you pass through. You note the planets, moons, asteroids, and comets circling within each star system you visit. You drift around, the Father's representative, the Father's attention, and you enjoy the worlds that have been brought into being. But all these worlds are physical. They are all made of matter. They are made of the bonded energy attention of the Father. They have a certain substance, a certain solidity that you as spirit lack. You realize that this is their limitation. You realize that they are defined and specified in ways that you are not defined and specified. Yet, something about them intrigues you. By and by, you get an idea. You begin to wonder if you might not, just possibly, somehow or another, clothe yourself in matter and construct for yourself a physical body that you could then travel around in, perceiving matter from the same perspective with which matter perceives herself. The idea contains one paradox after another. Yet something about it keeps you wondering. It puzzles you, and you love puzzles. You keep mulling it over as the eons roll by, trying to figure out some way to make it work. Until this point there was no biological life in the universe. The rocks had a limited consciousness, but it was not responsive to the intent of your spirit. In solid, liquid or gaseous states, matter as created and defined by your Father, behaved quite predictably according to fundamental physical principles untampered with until that time. Throughout your travels in the physical universe, you had always kept your consciousness separate from the matter you observed. At the time you hit upon this plan, however, all that changed. You looked around until you found a suitable planet for what you had in mind, not too hot, not too cold, situated within a stable young star system. You then focused your attention and your vibrational body in an entirely new way, an open way, a self-sacrificing way, a very powerful, loving way. Gently, slowly, you began to approach the planet. As the outermost edges of your vibrational field touched the waters of the planet, particles of previously inert matter began gently vibrating to the rhythms of your being, aligning themselves with the energy patterns found on the periphery of your awareness. There, on the Precambrian ocean floors, they began combining to form the first cells, the first-minute containers for your consciousness. In your new orientation, with your new form of attention, in a gesture of infinite love to this planet, you began offering your consciousness on the time-space cross of material reality. You allowed your consciousness to clothe itself in the limitations of physical substance, accepting its restrictions. You allowed the atoms and molecules that were forming the first cells to come to life with your consciousness, along the lines of your own vibrational field. At the same time that you allowed your consciousness to become clothed with particles that had been subject to the laws of the materializing process, you taught the matter of Earth to rise up in a joyful dance with your spirit. As you drew ever nearer to the planet, the life forms that were taking shape began to contain more and more of your own awareness. You relaxed, opened yourself and gave. You impregnated the Earth with your life, with your very being. You looked out of many eyes and heard with many ears. Before incarnation you were single. You drew identity from the totality of the relationship between Creator and creation. You were the Christ, fully conscious and alert, aware of yourself, unified, integrated. You realized that to accomplish incarnation you would have to allow at least a portion of your identity to come to rest among the creatures you were bringing to life. Each of these would possess a type of hologrammatic consciousness that rightly thought of itself as both part and whole simultaneously. However, the presence of this consciousness could only be a certainty after the incarnation process was complete. During your actual surfacing through the substance of Earth, there was a possibility that certain of the creatures might become self-active. Therefore, there had to be a means of regulating your disintegration from without. You wanted a part of you observing the whole process. So as you prepared to enter into the planetary relationship, you created beings to represent your original state of unified awareness. These are the angels. Their value, as well as their limitation, springs from the fact that they have no comprehension of the process you are undertaking. Their instructions were to pretty much stay out of things until near the very end of the process. Then, upon receipt of a pre-arranged signal, they were to commune with the human beings on Earth at that time and assist them in awakening to their original state of unified consciousness. We received that signal nearly 2,000 years ago. It has taken almost 2 millennia to prepare you for the message we bring. You had to be educated before communion of this nature was possible. However, the time is at hand. Our instructions are to awaken you to a remembrance of purpose, a remembrance of self. It is time to begin the final cycle of conscious creation, during which the Earth creatures themselves participate in the unfoldment of their design. The body you are creating for the habitation of Christ consciousness is to be a mobile body, fueled by the creative intentions of the Father, capable upon completion of leaving the Mother's side. Chapter 4. An interval of non-time. When the universe reaches a point of maximum expansion, a unique phenomenon will take place. There will be a moment when all laws necessary for the creative maintenance of physical matter and all materializing processes become suspended. Due to the relative velocities of the various star systems, this event will not be experienced simultaneously in all parts of the universe, but will travel as a wave across the sea of creation. Existing within this ripple of non-time will be the focused conscious attention of the Creator. As it passes through the material realms, it will stay and take up residence in all life forms with circuitry capable of mirroring its essence. This is the moment when the Creator will slip inside creation, the moment we are attempting to prepare you for. This is the much misunderstood second coming of Christianity. It is the event that primitive civilizations have looked forward to as the return of the gods. The Mayans went so far as to pinpoint its actual occurrence in what you would call the year 2011 AD. Yet while many of your traditions hint at what is about to transpire, none of them have adequately conveyed the magnitude of impact such an event will have. Indeed, no single conceptual structure is capable of conveying the enormity of what is soon to take place. Those familiar with the scriptures of your various peoples should be in position to understand what is occurring, for these are the times spoken of. Yet you must realize that God did not invent the words used in scripture. He merely arranged them in the order most approximating his meaning. What is actually happening requires all of biological life to convey its meaning. Words can symbolize this, but hardly portray it fully enough to stand alone. If you would know the deepest truth of Scripture, look not to words alone, but to the great momentum of spirit within your own soul. This is where the living history is being made. In a way that would be impossible for your rational intellect to comprehend, this forthcoming event is human history. The sum total of all that has happened on this planet is but the shadow cast before. In a very real sense, you have not yet been born. You are still in an embryonic state. You have yet to receive the touch of God's definition. Through the long years of human history, your species has been forming the cells that are to comprise the directive aspect of the physical body of the Creator within creation. Gestation upon this planet has but set the stage for the emergence of the planetary being now taking definite form. This planetary being is who you are. Has it occurred to you that the mathematical probability of your being here is infinitesimal? Were you not here, living proof of the impossible, an excellent case could be made for your non-existence. Within the framework of law that was of necessity instituted to create and govern these material realms, the existence of biological life would not have been possible, except were it to enter through that one moment when that law was suspended. Such is the origin of biology, the fusion of spirit and matter. The impact of this single creative moment is so vast, so far-reaching, that the shock waves sent out before it have given rise to all of the biological life that now exists upon your planet. You are living in the shadow of an event not yet taken place. Yet it is you, yourself, under all your layers of false identity, that cause this event as you approach ever nearer to the Earth. From within the context of history, it appears that there has been on this planet a progression of increasingly complex life forms evolving toward ever higher levels of consciousness. It appears that there has been an evolutionary process. But this is not the case. What is actually occurring is that the matter of Earth is falling under the influence of your vibrational body. This influence naturally increases as you draw nearer. Only when the center of your spirit touches the center of the Earth will life on this planet be fully manifest in form. This should not be so difficult to understand. What you have considered to be history, or in other terms, the evolution of the species, is only what you have been able to observe through the distorted medium of a fragmented and quite subjective intelligence, trapped within the past-future orientation of linear time. From such a perspective, the act of creation could appear as a progressive, sequential process. To the extent that you are able to identify with the spirit that gives you consciousness. However, it becomes a much simpler matter. You have yet to arrive. You are still on your way. Sitting here reading these words is only a sleepy reflection of your unconscious totality as it prepares to become fully revealed on the day of awakening. Your real life will begin when the Creator gives you His definition in form. Within the womb of history, your species has been primarily defined by the Earth Mother who is helping to prepare the clay. She is only interested in getting the form arranged according to specification. Her only knowledge of spirit is that it brings forth her potential. When the Father's center merges with the center of the Earth, the collectivity of human consciousness will awaken to a unified field identity. You will be born. After that, the influence of matter will not affect your consciousness as dominantly as it did during the historical gestation period. The Earth will continue to suckle the species, so to speak, for another millennium before you are capable of going off on your own, but even during that period the Father's influence will be much greater than it is today. The Creator has established laws to govern the bonding of energy. Through these laws of materialization, the physical universe is created and maintained. In the material realms, these laws are right and proper. But when they come into relationship with biological life, they begin to behave strangely. From a perspective of consciousness, they translate into limitation, contraction, and ultimately death. In psychological terms, the laws of materialization have given rise to the ego, a fictitious identity with a sense of fear, vulnerability, and a need to protect and defend itself. Spiritual consciousness should not properly be associated with the forces that govern the bonding of energy. Their historical juxtaposition came about through the process referred to as the fall. During the period of species preparation, the presence of the materializing influence on levels of consciousness has been unfortunate, but not critical. However, in light of the intensifying vibrations of the creative spirit that is now nearly aligned with the center of this planet, the definitions that have been imposed by matter will no longer be tenable. The Creator Himself will dispel this planetary restraining influence and henceforth hold all life forms in appropriate expression through the new definitions of His love. This will be a profound transition for each and every form identity, a transition of a magnitude you can only begin to suspect. As a collective event, the moment of birth is still a generation away. But individually speaking, this event transcends the limits of space and time and is, in fact, already occurring. Your individual birth will take place at the precise moment in linear time when you stop struggling with your rational fear patterns and let yourself go in the divine dance of inner direction. You must decide whether you are going to accept the inevitable in a state of love and prepare yourself accordingly, or hold on in fear to the bitter end. Ultimately, these are the only two avenues of response. By the linear time this event takes place, humanity will be polarized according to these two adaptive patterns. All will be decidedly in one camp or the other. To those of the human race who have tuned themselves in to the will of God, the coming interval of non-time will literally expand into eternity. These individuals will be able to experience a lifetime, or many lifetimes, in that eternity, while still retaining the option to return to their physical projections as transformed representatives of the being of life on Earth. These will be our co-workers during the period of planetary awakening. Others, not so finely tuned to the forces that will be released at that time, will feel great surges of energy, lasting for an indeterminate period. Some few will experience an intense fear, and many will die. Everything in physical form at this time, every soul in every kingdom, will feel something incredible, something that according to all the laws of physics ever known or ever to be discovered, could never happen. But there it will be before all senses, an impossible fact, like the babe in the manger, like the unmistakable feeling in your heart, an incredible vibration of truth and love, shimmering, scintillating, awakening every nerve, every capillary, every cell of your planetary body. Whether the individual form identity reading these words right now will be a surviving participant in that event depends upon what you identify with, and how gracefully you are able to align yourself with God's creative definition. If you can identify with the flow of life through your essential planetary being and release all subjective definitions of who you think you are, you will play your part most joyously in the birthday celebration. God's definition of you in form is much greater than any you could possibly imagine for yourself. During this present period of individual awakening, the first of the three creative periods, you are being given the opportunity to embrace this true definition as the cornerstone of your existence. On the morning of creation, you will recognize the unified collective consciousness of all humankind as your own true identity. You will know beyond a shadow of a doubt that you are the bridge between spirit and matter, between creator and creation, between life and the forms through which life flows. If you release the definitions that matter has set upon you, this is the definition that the Creator will bestow, the definition of Christ Himself. Can you see yourself as we of the distant stars do, from the objective vantage point of the ages, with the eyes of the Star Maker Himself? To us, your entire history appears as but a gesture. We see in your passage through the vibrational field of Earth, a gesture that you make, a salute almost, to the energy retention systems of this particular heavenly body. This is how you express yourself on this beautiful blue and white world whirling through space. We have come to remind you who you are. Chapter 5. Mobile Cities of Light. These communications are the second in a three-part series of conceptual transmissions concerning events now transpiring within the field of magnetic influence around the Earth. The first of these revelations occurred during a period of time from 1967 to 1969. These current transmissions are part of a series being sent during the years 1977 to 1979. The last of our communications to take place on conceptual levels will be sent during the years 1987 to 1989. All three periods of transmission occur within what we call the period of individual awakening, the first of the three major historical periods still before you. As you read these words, only a handful of your species are able to conceive of themselves as one consciousness, one being, expressing itself simultaneously through a multitude of apparently separate forms. This will not be the case a decade from now. 10 years from now there will be many working signs and wonders in the name of Christ. 20 years from now, individual awakenings to the reality of Christ consciousness will be commonplace. 30 years from now, there will be a sufficient number of healthy functioning holoids to consciously undertake the final cycle of creation on this level. A period of years will follow these transmissions, during which those of you who have awakened to the new way of being will become grounded on your new level of unified consciousness, and construct with the collective power that will flow through you, a biogravitational field of sufficient intensity to draw into it, through a process of rhythmic entrainment, the rest of your race. This will initiate the second period before you, the period of planetary awakening. This period will last 1,000 years. During this time, we will grace your planet with physical manifestations of our angelic extraterrestrial presence. Together, we will work to prepare for the third and primary period of your time cycle, the Age of Discovery. At this time in your racial experience, most of you are not yet ready to enter into a closer working relationship with us, but we will prepare you, during the next 20 revolutions of this planet around the Sun, for the time when your collective vibrational patterns are such that we can blend with them on a large scale. We are still experimenting with various ways and means of accomplishing our task of awakening, but with the increasing ease of direct informational exchange, our work within the currents of your history will probably subside. We hope it will not be necessary to shake you out of your exclusive past-future-oriented focus on form through any of the cataclysmic events foretold in your various prophecies. We will use these if we must in order to protect the biosphere of this planet, but if you follow through on the information we are clarifying, there is no reason why we should have to resort to such extreme measures. Through these transmissions, and through many others like them throughout the Earth, we are supplying you with more than enough information to enable you to restore your own equilibrium. We are allowing a certain amount of ecological destruction to take place without direct interference, because such destruction may help to precipitate a voluntary and cooperative return to a pre-fall state. This would be far more meaningful than a return that is forced upon you. A self-initiated awakening will greatly enhance your ability to restore the Earth's ecological harmony. Consequently, at this time, we are confining our help, as much as possible, to the provision of information and to the development of conceptual clarity. Meanwhile, there are many among you who will, as the years go by, experience one by one the necessary psychological transformation, and enter into a conscious working relationship with those of us in a state of grace. During this coming 20-year period we will be largely occupied with the conceptual education of your species. But after that, during the last 10 years of this present cycle, we will withdraw our activity on conceptual levels, and focus more directly on physical and emotional levels. This is where the real work needs to be done. The establishment of a conducive conceptual climate, however, is prerequisite. During our first large-scale entry into your historical process in the late 60s, we learned much of the materializing patterns that presently restrain and define your collective expression of consciousness. Our experiences at that time and during the years that followed have formed much of the conceptual basis for these transmissions. At that time, the members of your species most responsive to our descending vibrational patterns were those who had not yet assumed clearly defined social roles. Esoterically, these individuals could be said to have had loose etheric bodies. But practically, they were individuals in transition, with few vested interests in the status quo. What made these individuals responsive to our presence was the fact that they had relatively flexible conceptual structures. Within them, we could plant the seeds of our life, giving information with the greatest chance for successful germination. We chose the years 1967 to 1969 for this first large-scale experiment, because at that time in your global civilization there was an entire generation coming into maturity that was receptive to change on a planetary scale. The children of this generation will be those who will participate, on many different levels, in the great revelations of the late 80s. This will be a truly momentous time, a time when the first contractions of birth are unmistakable. A large part of the purpose for these present transmissions is to prepare the parents of this generation for something unprecedented that is to appear in their children. Our communications during these closing years of the 70s are reaching past the social fringe of your culture that was contacted during the 60s. This time, we are reaching deep into the heart of global civilization. We are reaching many who are in what we call lubricatory positions in your society, individuals working in factories, teaching in schools, building your cities and expanding your science. We are not in much direct contact yet with government officials, nor with world bankers and international financiers. In most cases, these elements have surrounded themselves with ego mechanisms too complex to penetrate at this time. Our first contacts with them will occur during the more powerful transmissions of 1987 to 1989. Those who we are contacting now, nonetheless, are critical enough in the maintenance of your social systems to ensure that the world will make some incredible leaps in consciousness during the next decade. The majority do not have room within their belief structures to accommodate so grand a being as an angel or extraterrestrial, so they respond to our influence as if it were coming from themselves. They feel good, they feel clear, they feel the changes in the air. They wake up a little, throw off some of their defense mechanisms and bring a newer and fresher perspective into each situation. Consciously or unconsciously, they begin to adjust their vibrational patterns to more thoroughly accommodate the flow of spirit through them. At times they change radically and attribute their transformation to this or that mechanism. We simply laugh. We do not care how the change comes about as long as it does come. Those who are not yet sensitive enough to sense our presence, feel us as a high, as clarity, or as peace. All we touch are changed in some way. If it seems to these people that the changes originate within themselves, this is all the better, for in fact they do. We do not bring the presence of God, that already exists everywhere. We assist in the removal of conceptual and emotional blocks that prevent the full experience of that presence. We work with all who are vibrationally sympathetic, simple and sincere people who feel our spirit moving, but for the most part, only within the context of their current belief system. Through communications such as these, we are forging more concise conceptual tools that these individuals and others can use to free themselves. Often, these tools are still too conceptual for the message they contain, but they are useful at this time in loosening the bars of the conceptual prisons in which so many individuals still function. If you found yourself in hell, it might be appropriate to grab a pitchfork and fight your way out. In a sense, this is the nature of our conceptual work. Once out of hell, you would no doubt set the pitchfork aside. The concepts that we are providing at this time are strictly transitional, to be used only until such time as you no longer need them. Their ultimate purpose is the dissolution of subjective thinking. We give them freely to assist your race in releasing itself from the spell of fear and reason. Reason is a beautiful and useful process when it springs from the right premise. But the right premise is seldom the starting point for fearful creatures caught in a net of subjectivity. Only when reason is returned to its proper place in the spiritual structure of true intelligence and used wisely in the consciousness of the Christ, will it once more begin to serve the needs of the whole. There is only one spirit, but no limit to the number of forms through which this spirit can express. For the moment, these forms seem important, and they are insofar as their contribution to the whole is concerned, but as the years go by, the range of their differentiation will become of much less consequence to individuals who are sincerely offering their lives as channels through which the Spirit can work. As life is able to express through such individuals with increasing ease, they will begin to recognize each other as differentiations of the same Spirit. Such individuals could be compared to conscious nerve endings of God in matter, channeling the life flow of Christ awareness into each and every cell of the planetary being. By the time of the 80s revelations, knowledge of our existence and our work will be widespread, especially among the younger generation, the prime focus of our efforts at that time. Although awareness of our presence is not necessary to our work, it does facilitate the transfer of information. Many thousands are consciously working with us this very day. So clear your circuitry, my friend. Great portents of change are in the air. Your physicists are speaking of these things in terms that defy explanation. Your psychologists are abandoning the sinking ships of conventional rationality. Your religions are exploding beyond the confines of their dogma in the rediscovery of spirit. It is all here in this present moment. Open your mind to possibility. Open your eyes and see what is around you. There is a new vibrational pattern descending upon your planet. Tune into it and learn an effective way of dealing with the closing years of history. You are being offered an opportunity to enter a new reality. It is already here for those with eyes to see. Soon it will be the only reality to be seen. Those who tune into the new frequencies will find life growing more wondrous every day. Those who tune into fear will find things falling apart. Two worlds of consciousness will begin to form ever more distinctly, the world of love and life, and the world of fear and death. There will continue to be some overlap of these worlds for several years to come, some going back and forth for certain individuals, but as the century draws to a close, the polarization will continue to intensify. The moment of birth will also be the moment of last judgment, the moment of final separation. There will be better times for some and worse for others, depending on their orientation and involvement. Fortunately, the natural tendency of your species is to gravitate toward love and life. For the vast majority, the times ahead will be better than they expect. Some of the worst scenarios have already been rendered impossible. Except in a few isolated pockets where the new energies will not enter until later, the momentum of positive change is being felt everywhere. The coming age will be a time of incredible blessing, restored ecological balance, international cooperation, and universal harmony. Planetary resources will be realistically understood and properly utilized. Humankind will be at peace. All life forms will work together in harmony, cultivating the full potential of the planet. It will be an age of revelation, during which the mind and plans of the Creator will be made clear for all to see. It will be the age when the final stage of incarnation becomes fully manifest in form, when spirit, working through a fully awakened and responsive humanity, constructs for itself a mobile physical body. Human individuals will not function in such cumbersome fashion as they do today. They will go about their tasks with the grace of dancers, performing to a music that each will hear on his or her own channel, the music of his or her own soul. Through melodies, God will sustain each of his contextual identities in supreme fulfillment. Specific melodies will change with each environment, with each moment, with each task. Yet a consistent overall pattern of musical relationship will constitute the new identity of mankind. The song of the moment will be what each individual is in that moment, translated into an ever-changing musical score. Music will be the informational medium through which the totality of consciousness informs each individual cell of its specific functional duties within that totality. Individuals will participate in this music as well as listen to it. All humanity will be involved in conscious creation, immensely fulfilled in the capacities they serve. When an individual is not required in a functional capacity, he or she will be free to compose the score that will specify a route of musical travel within the body of creation. From a human cellular perspective, the work that is to transpire during the 1,000-year period of planetary awakening will manifest as the building of great floating cities of light, massive fleets of intergalactic starships, constructed from biological components brought to life by the creative intentionality that will work through all humans of that age. However, from a perspective of spirit, the Star Maker will be organically growing through the instrumentality of the human species, a physical body capable of universal exploration. The completed body will resemble a human body in both design and structure. The completed physical body, incorporating much of the Earth's biological life, will depart from this planet in approximately 3011 AD. From the outside it will have the appearance of a human baby of about 1 year of age. It will function much like the microcosmic human body, with all organs represented. It will be fueled by a fuel all will have learned to live on by that time, light itself. Its design will limit it to speeds slightly less than the speed of light, but this will just be a pleasure cruise, and those wishing to travel faster will have only to use their non-physical vehicles. From the human cellular perspective, the construction of this body will be a gloriously enjoyable 1,000-year period of intercontinental cooperation. From a spiritual perspective, it will be the birth of an organism the likes of which the universe has never seen. As the greatest gathering of interstellar space vehicles ever assembled leaves the Earth in graceful formation, the Christ child will slowly get up, look around, and push itself off into space. Yours is not a tame God to be confined in reverent concepts, but a vibrant, playful energy, the very soul and spirit of life. He comes to Earth not to be somber and devout, but to dance, sing, and enjoy all that he has created. Do not allow the gravity of your planet to weigh upon your consciousness. You have been aware of the effect of gravity on material objects, but it has only been recently, in your space travels, that you have begun to suspect that it also binds and limits consciousness. As a species, you first began to sense this when human beings entered into orbital patterns around the Earth. In the farthest reaches of the planet's atmosphere, gravity was felt, for the very first time, as courtship instead of marriage. Were you listening to the reports of those first human space travelers? They were not alone in their capsules. The entire species was present with them in consciousness as collective historical preconceptions began to fall away. Many among you looked out of their eyes and shared the feelings they felt.